I actually haven't been this hooked on a game in years.
Oh wow.
I've always been an active Legion player, right?
Yeah.
But um, really like feeling like God, like giddy, like wake up and like I want to play Legion, right? Or like I'll get couple games before
All right.
bed, like.
So my name is Doofus. I've brought with me Jules, a game developer of Legion TD2. Um, I mean, let's just start. Like, how did you get started with Legion TD2, Jules? Like, where did that start out?
Yeah, that's quite a story. So back in high school, um, well, he goes by Lisk. I gotta call him Brent probably occasionally because Lisk is my best friend since we've been in kindergarten. We've known each other for most of our lives, and we got into gaming together. We eventually got into modding together. So we started modding in high school, maybe around freshman or sophomore year. Actually, I think it was freshman year, maybe even middle school. The timeline's a bit blurry, but one of the maps that he made, one of the mods that he made for Warcraft 3 was called Legion TD, and I was the playtester. It was him doing the coding, and it was me playtesting and helping with random suggestions and design. But it was Brent that made it. It was List that made it, and sort of popped off. Um, you know, it was the most successful mod that he had made. Uh, it gained traction in a lot of different countries. Suddenly, we realized players were translating it into other languages. We were seeing versions of it pop up in different regions, and um, so yeah, it really popped off. But we were still in high school, so we went off to
Oh wow.
college. And it wasn't a business or anything. It was just we were doing it for fun. We were just hanging out and modding.
Yeah.
And then we went off to college, and Lisk open sourced Legion TD, the mod, and we sort of left it alone. We just started studying and
Yeah.
not really worrying about modding and gaming as much. Then later, I was at Riot Games at the time, and Lisk was thinking about potentially making a standalone sequel to Legion TD,
Yeah.
and he reached out to me, and we started it together at the
Dang,
time. So
that's awesome. Damn.
yeah.
That's a long journey. See, I didn't even know about that. You know, I didn't know. That's crazy to think you guys were in high school when you started modding.
Yeah, I think it might have been like eighth grade or ninth grade, really
Wow.
young, honestly. Yeah,
Damn. I was just getting into like StarCraft around that point.
yeah.
I had no real idea. And so the original reason I wanted to ask you for this Q&A was of course this massive patch. Like let's be honest, this is probably one of the biggest patches you guys have had in a long time. A lot of big changes with the mercenaries, with the masterminds. So I guess would you say that so far this patch has seemed successful to you guys in implementation?
Yeah, so definitely. Yeah, I can talk about some of like my personal perspective, maybe from what I'm hearing from the community, things like that. Personally, I've been so hooked on the patch, and I'm not just saying that. Like that's part of the reason my sleep has been not good. Is like I actually haven't been this hooked on a game in years.
Oh wow.
I've always been an active Legion player, right?
Yeah.
But um, really like feeling like God, like giddy, like wake up and like I want to play Legion, right? Or like I'll get couple games before bed, like that type of feeling I haven't had in a while. And honestly, I've been loving. And it started with the season 2024 patch, especially with all the new masterminds.
Oh yeah,
I think
that's
there were some nice meta improvements with the worker changes.
yeah. I
I
agree.
know there's some pros and cons, but overall, I think it's been nice. And the masterminds have been so fun to me. Megamind, Kingsguard, and my personal favorite has been Champion.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
just been spamming that. I just love the fantasy of it, even when it wasn't particularly strong in the previous patch.
Yeah.
I love the fantasy of it. So yeah, I'm just hooked.
Yeah, I'm with you on the champion. Like, I'll be honest. Like, as a content creator, my best videos recently have been champion.
Yeah,
Champion flower. I need to do like champion pyro. Like, honestly, I think I just want to take a day and just spam all champions. So I think the
I've had I've had some where my champion game convinced someone else to start playing champion. Like
Oh
they
wow.
didn't think it was good. They saw me play it and they're like, that is busted. I
Oh
need
yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
And
No.
it was I had like Exodia with, I think I had I've played, probably over 100 games of champion at this point.
Wow.
And so I think I had like some flying force with Trinity Archer with every single buff imaginable,
Yeah.
Nightmare with every buff imaginable. I recently had one with God, I think I had one with Green Devil, one with Spectral Scallywag, one with the 6-stack Lioness where I have the 2 serpents in the front,
Okay.
and a bunch of chieftains behind it, and you just unkillable Lioness.
Wow.
It was
Yeah, because the
with
damage
champion. It's been
reduction.
really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was like 50% damage reduction.
Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. See, if anybody's listening, I just hope that they use champion earlier in the game. Because I definitely when it first came out, I'd have teammates that would wait until like wave 12,
Oh, that's a
15,
losing strategy.
right? And we're
Yeah.
already behind, and then they'll place it on like a violet that they had on wave 5,
Uh,
and I'm like, why did you use this
Basically, yeah,
earlier?
you want to use it by wave 3-ish,
Yeah.
or like, yeah. I mean, if you're not rushing like a T6 or like a Canopy or a Spectral Scallywag, something like that, on like wave 2 or 3, then you just want to put it down as soon as possible, as soon as you're at risk of leaking. Yeah.
That's exactly how I put it. That's the perfect response to comments I got. Is why didn't you place it on 1 or 2? Because like
Yeah.
once you're in risk of leaking. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. And also, it seems like this patch is like more new players. Is that sort of? Do you guys feel like the direction is more a new player oriented, like with the lock in, how the auto lock in just sort of sets your roll up? Is that?
I would say that this patch, we talk about this patch, like the past 2 patches, they've not been, our focus hasn't been particularly on new players. Like there are some patches where like, hey, we are very focused on new player progression, and a lot of that is actually behind the scenes stuff
Okay.
that um veteran players aren't going to even notice or maybe care about because it's not affecting them. But it's huge improve. Like if the difference between the game now and the game at launch and the game at early access launch, it was just night and day. I mean, literally players would lose their first 10 games and then they would quit, 90% of them. It's so different now, the new player sort of onboarding experience, that more players stick around. And then yeah, we also did recently have the daily deal on Steam, so we had like a little bit of a marketing push there. And yeah, in general, just constantly trying to improve the game. But this patch wasn't particularly geared towards new players. We did it, the lock-in change we felt was actually a benefit for both new players and veteran players. So new players, we were quite confident in the change, because basically drafting is not something new players enjoy doing or have any capability to do. They don't know any of the units. How could you draft a comp, right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
the lock-in changes were good there. Also has higher income, which is good for them. And then for veteran players, it basically is a viable standalone mastermind. Like I actually picked it once just to try it out. It's kind of like a not so YOLO in some sense, where it's you don't get to draft, but you also do get pretty good starting resources. So
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it just sort of leads into the more masterminds, right? There's so many more masterminds right now. I guess we could talk about each and every one, but my main question would be like, right now, what would you say is your favorite mastermind? And if you'll say it, what is your least favorite mastermind that you know?
yeah, sure. No, I can definitely speak to that. My favorite masterminds champion. Talked to you about that earlier. After that, I would say I really like Mega Minds. I like the fantasy. I like the name, the icon, like the banner, the just the fantasy of like, hey, I can play whatever,
Yeah.
and I'll take the 1 gold bonus and I'll beat you with it. I sort of love that fantasy. But I think that they all sort of have a special place in my heart. Personally, like you can look at what I've played. I'm sure people have looked it up, what I've played this season and previous seasons. In general, I'm not a chaos player or a redraw player. Otherwise, everything I play, everything I think there's like a time like, hey, I want to pick this now.
Yeah.
Um, Every otherwise, I never voluntarily pick those two, to be honest. That's just my personal preference.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course.
Chaos is actually quite popular, especially in the lower elo. And obviously it's sometimes a controversial, mastermind in terms of, hey, it has RNG and all this stuff. Personally, redraw, yeah, I think it's actually still, to be honest, undertuned based on the data that we're seeing. I know there's some high elo players that are convinced it's strong. It really, it seems undertuned, and yeah, the previous redraw was really unpopular for a number of reasons, and we wanted to give it a chance at a rework. I feel like the new rework has a chance of finding an audience.
Yeah.
To me, it almost feels a bit like an auto battler, like where you pay to reroll, right? Isn't that's basically what auto battlers are?
Yep.
One of the mechanics in auto battlers. I feel like there's a potential there for that audience that really likes that. And I feel like we can get it in a spot where, hey, it's balanced, not picked too much in high elo, and finds its audience.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one is currently missing the mark the most, I guess, in terms of maybe initial reception and balance. Yeah.
Interesting. It's funny that you said chaos, because I feel like chaos is so busted right now. But then, like you said, it's just like each mastermind has their sort of their spaces in the game, and I feel like it's so
I have data in front of me. I can pull up. So chaos right now in, let's say,
busted.
2200 plus. What do we want to look at here?
Yeah, sure.
2200 plus is 48% win rate.
Interesting.
That doesn't mean it's bad. I'm not.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just, hey, it's information. That's not typically busted. Things are not typically 48% win rate in a game like Legion.
Yeah.
It's possible. It's possible. There's a few players that are using it really well, and most players that are using it, even at 2200 plus, are not good at it, and it's objectively busted for the very best. But yeah, just sharing that information.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. This is pretty broad, pretty vague. So I mean, if you don't like the question, no worries. But what is your ideal version of LTD2? Is this sort of the ideal situation like where the game is at right now?
I can speak to that in a few different parts. So there's the the game itself, right? Not even gameplay, but just the game itself. There's so much more we'd like to do. There's art that we'd love to improve. There's tons of features we wish we could add, and we wish we could prioritize. And part of it is that, hey, we're a small team and we're three people, and I think players don't quite comprehend that a game of this complexity literally typically as a team is like 10 times as many people. And so it's just, we cannot do every single thing that we want to do and that players want. Sometimes we have to really be careful about prioritization. Also, the game has been out for a number of years, and there's a thing called technical debt. So it's like there are some things that are just difficult to work on, and we could, but it would introduce a lot of risk and it could break the game. And so yeah, and the ideal world of the game is we could not have that technical debt. We could have a bigger team, all of that. There's also the gameplay side. Yeah, there's things that we'd love to change, and we're always striving to improve gameplay and balance and the feel of the game. Personally, I'd love if all battles basically were deterministic. I'd love that. It's just with our current code base and how it's set up, it's just not possible. So
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. So in terms of game development, do you guys have any plans going forward, or is it just sort of a day by day thing?
I mean, yeah, I can't promise any new features here, but yeah, I mean, we've been like any game studio or tech company, we're constantly prioritizing and not just thinking about things on a day-to-day basis, but we have long-term plans of like, hey, what's sort of this quarter, what we're doing, what's our big drop this year. And then of course we always are monitoring things on a day-to-day basis and reevaluating potentially emergent things come up that we have to work on. So
All right, sweet.
But yeah, I would say just growing the game for sure. That's
Yeah,
always
of course.
it's always the goal.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's some long-term stuff that we are working on behind the scenes. I can't share details about it right now, but hopefully eventually we can drop that news. But it's a lot of the work is like, yeah, there's a long-term stuff that maybe players sometimes don't notice or appreciate, but yeah, we're always working on that stuff.
Yeah, and like I remember you guys had that roadmap before where it's showing like what you're currently aimed at, what you're long term aimed at. So, what is your favorite part about Legion TD2? What's your favorite part about the
The
game?
sort of answer that comes to mind is I like poker a lot.
Okay.
I also like chess. I grew up, Liska and I grew up playing chess competitively. Um, and I feel like Legion sort of touches on, sort of captures parts of poker and parts of what's called blitz, which is speed chess,
Okay.
that I like. So um, having to basically make the best decision with the information you have within, let's say, around 30 seconds, um, you know, it feels like blitz chess to me. And then poker, the aspect of you don't know everything, you don't have all the information, and you have to make the best decision based on what you predict they're going to do, and sort of the idea of mixed strategy, and how in the same exact game state you can make different plays. Like it's optimal to make different plays, because if you do the same thing every single time, it's exploitable. So like if you king up every time I won and I know that, then I can just play openers, or I can play fiesta and exploit that. Or if I know that you snail every time, then I can use it to my advantage. So you want to mix it up. um Similarly, you don't want to pick the same. You wouldn't want to, if you pick fiesta every time, you don't want to leak intentionally every time I won. You want to mix it up, things like that. I
Know that
That
very well.
aspect is really fun to me. And there's a mind game aspect, but there's also it's just literally like mixed strategy, equilibrium, probability, where like you just sort of, I'll do this one with 33% probability, this one with 33% probability, and that one with 33% probability. 3 different actions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I always like that because it sort of like boosts my ego a little bit. That like I'm terrible at chess. I don't know if you've ever watched like just snippets of it on my stream. I'll play chess. I'm just so awful at that. And
yeah,
somehow I got lucky to where at Legion I'm good. Or it's like I'm at least like pretty decent. And
yeah,
I just have no idea how like in a like you're saying, like so much of Legion is just so strategic and making these
mm,
calculations, making these guesstimations, like am I gonna get snailed? Is the person gonna go 14 or 15? Can I get away with this
yeah.
push? I don't know how I'm I'm good at it, but I guess the 5,000 hours is probably a big piece to that.
Yeah, so yeah, no, for sure. It feels good to be good at a game like that. And honestly, yeah, I think the type of people that are good at games like this, it usually extends to other games as well. Maybe chess isn't one,
Yeah.
but yeah. Like the way of thinking has evolved so much in Legion from early days to now. Like I, back in the like early access, for example, like top rated players, I'm not going to name names, but they would say things like, "Oh, you never snail a green devil on 2, right?" Um, and then I remember watching a streamer, he got snailed on 2, and he was like mad, right?
Yeah.
And he leaked 2 because he didn't add
Yeah.
anything. He was like, "No, you should never do that." And then I remember thinking, like, no, it clearly just works. So
Yeah, it works.
sometimes you do it,
Yeah.
right? And that's the idea of what I'm saying is sometimes you send the snail, sometimes you add, sometimes you don't send the snail, things like that.
Yeah.
The way of thinking has evolved so much.
Yeah, no,
And in addition, we have more words for it to describe. I think Offma has done a really good job of introducing words to the sort of Legion vernacular, like finding paths to victory, and what does he call it? Just like the casters have done a great job in Nova Cup to help sort of spread that Legion terminology.
yeah, definitely. No, this is a good thing you said because I've always like I used to in the middle where I started being kind of good at the game, it would always be like a never send Podon 3, never send Podon 3. But there's those games, where the person
Sometimes
greeds,
you do, because
right?
if people never send it, then they'll exploit that by underbuilding and shifting for 4.
Yep.
So you have to check it sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They full shift, they get the Sky Queen on 4, or they full shift, you send Lizard Snail, and they leak bad, and now they're behind,
Yeah.
and, so you never know. I guess in terms of, like, for me, like, the ladder part of it. Do you like how, like, ranked is top 100, ladder points?
Oh, ladder. So I think that the game it's we've gotten ladder and competitive Legion to a better spot where um we, players, the idea is that, like, hey, ultimately the purpose of a game is to have fun, right? And
Yep.
so that should be the number one thing why you want to play.
Yeah.
um but yeah, of course it's important to incentivize people to play early and sort of not make smurfs, things like that. So
Yep.
we have the ladder points for that, and we have like we have elo decay now that's actually based on when you have to play. That could certainly be improved. Right now I think you have to play once every 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
That could be improved. That could be something like you have to play 5 games within 2 weeks or something like that. We just haven't built that yet, but I'd love to get there.
Okay.
Ladder points, I think they're not perfect, but I think they help, and they add another um, sort of activity element to it, where it's like, hey, I play 10 games a week. That keeps me competitive with ladder points. It's just always, every player values something differently,
Oh, yeah, of
and
course.
so adding different sort of reward systems for different types of players is helpful. Um, that's why, for example, we get something like event points, right, for the 1v1.
Yep.
And I've heard top players say, like, wow, like there's a diamond player at the top. Like they don't want that, right? They want only the grandmasters and legends to be at the top. And it's like, let those players have that, right? Like, because you're, as a legend or grandmaster, you're already at the top of the leaderboard for rank, which is, we all know, the
Yeah.
most important thing,
Yeah.
right? So let the diamond player that played a bunch of games and climbed up the event points have their moment, their weekend to shine once a year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'm pretty happy with the competitive state of things, but always room to improve.
Sweet. And I guess, can I lead that then into esports type? Do you guys like where you're at? I know Nova Cup is a staple. I think everybody loves Nova Cup. Let's be honest, it's where the most viewers come to watch Legion streams. I mean, it's awesome. I love Nova Cup. It's great for my YouTube. Those
Yeah,
videos are always the best.
I really like Novak. I watch every single time, usually VODs because it's that crazy hours in my time zone. But
Yep.
there's been a few times that I've watched live. Um, and yeah, we put in a lot of work behind the scenes to make that happen. It was actually originally just me basically running the whole thing every time, and I was like burning out.
Oh my
Now we
god.
have a support staff where we have mods and we have casters and um, just tournament organizers that want to be involved in the help, and like Danny's doing a lot of work as well on it, and they're just killing it, honestly, with that. So really proud of them and happy where things are there. Of course, I'd love to grow the scene, love to grow the community, have more players competing, bigger prize pools, sort
Yep.
of maybe exclusive invite tournaments or whatever. I'd love to also cater more to different time zones. Like I'd love to be able to
Yep.
participate myself, but I can't
Yeah.
with the starting at 3 in the morning. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'd love to do more, but I'm really happy with how far it's come.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I was just talking to Shadow about that, and he was saying how cool it'd be if there was another tournament that catered to the other time zones, the Australia,
Yeah,
the Asia time zones. Yeah, that'd be sweet. I think you guys had one of those with Nikomata Cup
we did
a
have
while ago.
one.
I was
Yeah.
I was on vacation when that happened. I was actually kind of
Okay.
bummed.
Yeah, and we had one, and it ended up being so. It ends up being Europe kind of gets the best of both worlds, where it was like the Nova Cups tend to cater to Europe and North America and South America,
Yeah.
and then the Necomata Cup catered to Asia, Oceania, and but also Europe was able to participate. So it ended up being a lot of European
Yeah.
players anyway.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is actually just like the Asia audience. There's going to be also fewer English speakers, so like even if they could participate, they might not fully know how to sign up, or
Yeah.
so there's those logistical issues as well.
Hmm.
So there's a lot to do.
What's a day in the life of Jules?
Yeah. it really changes every day. So we wear so many different hats because we're such a small team, but definitely, we get on, and when I come online for work, it's like I checked our business Discord, and I also check our community Discord, seeing what we do is called unlocking. So it's like I'll unlock Danny and Brent and Lisk with any questions they have or requests of me. So anything that is emergent that just came up, I'll take care of that first.
Okay.
In addition, yeah, of course, monitoring the community, and I'm basically reading almost everything in Discord, feedback on Discord, Reddit, Steam, various places. And so, and basically taking that feedback in and filtering it where I can pass it along to let's say Lisk, or I can take sort of the best suggestion that I read that day and be like, hey, let's consider this for next patch, or just giving more thought to like, hey, maybe this is a pain point right now with gameplay. And everything I see, everything players write, I see it. It's just we can't respond to it immediately sometimes. And also sometimes there's just some players that think that, and other players that think the opposite. So I've heard players on this patch, for example, say the king is too strong. I've heard players say the king is paper. I've heard players say you don't want to push workers early. I heard players say it's all about pushing workers early. I hear the opposite. So, and that's good. That means there's still exploration to be done, and maybe the truth lies somewhere in the middle where it's not just all about one thing. So that's sometimes why we don't immediately just, hey, players sometimes will be like, why are they ignoring our feedback or something like that? And that's not the case. We're really reading it and honestly taking it in, but we can't just, if we just listen to every single player individually, the game would just be like changing every second, bouncing.
Yeah.
And also there's sometimes a disconnect between what Hilo thinks or what Discord thinks or what streamer viewers think, right? Twitch viewers.
Yeah.
There's sort of circles and bubbles, and there's a disconnect between them sometimes and the broader community. And we've seen that a few times where, like, for example, in Discord, it was last year, it was like, hey, everyone wants shorter games. And they were like, no one doesn't want shorter games. And so we surveyed players, and it turned out most players actually are happy with game time. And then by a 2-to-1 margin, players prefer longer games. They want games to go longer. So that was another one is classic ranks. We just put out a poll about that. And it was, hey, should we hide classic ranks? And if you look at Discord, most players would say yes, we should hide classic ranks. The vote is overwhelmingly in favor of keeping classic ranks.
Oh, wow.
It's something like 5 times as many players want to keep classic ranks as remove it, and there's of course a lot that are just fine either way.
Yeah.
That isn't. We don't always go majority rules. Sometimes as devs, we have to make tough decisions, and if we think something is for the best, despite what the poll says or what a majority says, and we think, hey, as developers, we think this is the right decision for the game in the long run, sometimes we'll still do it. But of course, that's a piece of information we can't ignore. So anyway, I think I sidetracked a bit from the exact question, but
you're all good.
But there's a lot of other unfun things that I have to do: business, taxes, accounting, outsource management. There's a lot of other things that are going on behind the scenes. My job is not just playing the game and balancing it. I wish that would be fun, but that's about probably 10% of my job.
Yeah.
So
that's fair. And you reminded me, I totally whiffed on earlier. All these new classic modes. I'll be honest, I haven't even played all of them. There's a lot of them. Who came up? Did you guys come up with these? Was this Discord? Is this a combination of both? There's so many cool ones. A lot of people seem to like the tower defense one. I really need to try that one.
That one list came up. We all come up with ideas on our own. We'll pitch it in our business Discord, Attack Games Discord, and sort of discuss it internally. some of the ideas were at least inspired by things from the community. Of course, we read that that the different threads and ideas people had. Yeah, I mean, we knew that some of the previous ones were missing the mark. And yeah, so we're like, hey, let's give some more thought to what and some more time to what could be exciting. So we're pretty happy with the ones we released so far. There's some pain points around the dual build one, which I share those with the community as well. Those pain points, and we have like literally I just proposed a new game mode to Lisk yesterday or the day before. So and he thought it was a cool idea. So yeah, we're always sort of iterating and discussing ideas.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I remember the previous Gigamercs, and I was like, but this new one
Yeah,
has been really
new
cool
one
because
is really fun.
yeah, you get
And
this massive,
we wanna
massive unit.
yeah, we want to be careful about like we don't want to overbalance like because it's classic, but there are some outliers that we do sometimes have to touch. Like I feel like Mimic and Gigamercs is absurd. And I actually knew that was going to happen before, but I was like, I was going to let this happen. And then I think we probably have to nerf it. I already had preemptively nerfed Safety Mole because if Safety Mole scaled from 1 to 8, it would just
Yeah.
be ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it scales from 1 to 4. The others all scale 1 to 8. Mimic probably has to be reduced. And then beyond that, yeah, classic. We have some classic balance improvements going out next patch. Again, we don't want to overhack individual units, but there's been enough feedback, like AOE or Death Cap or Pyro or Boar, things like that. Personally, I think Egg Sack is the most broken thing by far, and it's funny because if you asked players in general, they wouldn't mention that. I feel like it's more of a high elo that knows it. But yeah, that one's tricky.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, no, I totally see that. All I see is Pyro. Oh,
Yeah,
Doof, how do you beat Pyro? How do you beat Pyro in Classic? How do you beat Pyro in Classic? What
yeah,
would you send against Pyro in Classic? One, for fun question, you guys had the plushie that was awesome. What sort of goes into like delivering that? I mean, that seemed from my point of view like a massive success.
yeah.
How did that come to fruition?
Well, the company, what's the name of the company? They reach out to us, and they were like, "Hey, this is what we do. We make plushies, and here's how it works. And are you interested?" And we liked their pitch, so we responded. I took a call with them. This was a while back, but took a call with them, and then yeah, I liked the idea, and so Lisk has overseen a lot of that. He really enjoys that kind of stuff, like so he's been for the most part owning most of that.
Okay.
And yeah, it's we pick basically a character that we think is going to be appealing to players.
Yeah.
So we went with Safety Mole for the first one, and then we'll come up with like some references, things like that, and then they'll come back with their own design, and then we'll go back and forth. They'll send us like, hey, we might say like, hey, this looks good, and they'll send us like a test product. And like, actually, once we see it in person, feel like it needs a few modifications, so we'll propose a few more iterations, and eventually we land on something. And then from there, it's just after we land on the final design. From there, it's hey, how do we just get players hyped about it? So you know, we'll put out some content and different announcements, and sometimes we'll pair it like we paired the other one with some in-game rewards, which you don't have to do. But we like figured, and honestly, that type of thing is not for making money. Like we basically barely made anything. It's more about something that it's like a passion thing. We love. Like I have a Safety Mole in my place here.
Yep.
I love seeing it every day, and we like that players get to sort of connect with Legion outside the game. And be like, hey, I have this game I care about, and I have this cute little plush. So it's more about really, honestly, this one's really more about serving the players and the community, and because it's not this thing's not about money. Ideally, we could make money and make players happy. That's the ideal, but
that's fair. So I gotta ask, right? Is there any future plushies or merchandise in the works, or is that more of a list question? Or
yeah, I mean, I will say I don't want to promise, but I will say, the first campaign with the Safety Mole was successful, and So there's definitely consideration for a second one. Cannot say what unit, but I'm sure you can make a. I'm sure if you made some guesses, you wouldn't be far off. So
I think I'd get it right on the first guess, but
okay.
yeah, Yuzora, but that would be my guess.
Lips are sealed.
Yeah.
Say that with the current patch, like I'm personally happy with it. I know there's players that have some gripes, and we are genuinely listening to that. And literally every single time I log on Discord, every time I play a game myself, in the shower, I'm thinking of ways to improve the game. As much as anyone listening to this thinks that they think about the game a lot, I think about it 10 times more.
Yeah.
Like in addition to loving the game and playing all myself, I also work on it 40 hours plus a week. And it's my livelihood. So I definitely constantly think about it, writing things down. So we do take into account everything that's being said. And for players that have gripes about maybe the games are going too long, that's something that I'm listening to and maybe trying to think of some ways to shorten it next patch. But I will say that this patch games are actually shorter than the previous patch on average. That's just the fact. I look at it every day, and it really ends up being a sort of confirmation bias plus self-fulfilling prophecy, where it's like all games go long, and then the players that say that, I look the way that they're literally chain income sending early, building bankers, playing castle. They're literally doing everything possible to elongate the game. And they're like, I told you. Like I literally I won a game away 10 yesterday. Like you can close out games. You just if you play around it. Anyway, but that feedback is still heard. And so we want to satisfy players that like long games. We also want to satisfy players that like short games. We can't make everyone perfectly happy, but we will do the best, to make the player base happy as a whole. That's what we're doing every day.
Absolutely.
One thing that I'd love to see more, and it's not a comment at you or any person in particular, just in general, I'd love to see like more positivity in streams, because I think it's just so easy to be negative. And it's sort of a Twitch thing or a streamer thing or an info. I don't know what it is. It just seems like it happens in it's not a Legion thing. It's It's every the biggest streamers in other games are like the most toxic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Asmongold is so toxic, but so many viewers.
Yeah. And I get why that has a following. Players they're sort of watching like some bullying happen in real time, and like sort of, I don't know, you're just like players, I guess viewers like watching that. But I personally like when a streamer is negative, like I want to turn it off. If they're just constantly complaining, it's just like, I'd love to see more positivity in general. That's what gets me excited to watch streams and watch Legion the most. So that's just something I wanted to bring up, because basically being happy, enjoying the game. It's like I like watching people enjoy games, right? It's like mukbang where people are eating. Imagine if someone was like angrily eating. It's like, I don't really want to watch this.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And I think that it just promotes a healthier sort of. You'll just be happier if you're just like not verbally complaining. Like maybe you'll still be pissed inside, like that is so dumb. I hate that RNG. I hate that shutdown. But like not verbalizing it makes you happier. That's just sort of that's something that I have adopted into my own life, because I used to be a bit like you in some sense, Doofus, where it reminded me of me in my like 20s, where like I would get really tilted at something in game, and I would just be like just verbalizing it, talking about it, and then I'd be like, you know what, I'm gonna stop saying it out loud, and eventually I just got less mad inside. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally.
And another thing is, like, I would say Sandbox is people's just own worst enemy, right? Because look, I think there's value in sort of actual constructive sort of self-feedback, where it's like, hey, I want to see if that normally holds, or what was the right send, and so you do Sandbox. Totally fine. But the idea of like this, I'm gonna sandbox this to confirm my belief that this game's super RNG and I just got unlucky. That's generally like, I would personally avoid. I'd never do that. I would avoid that, because it's like, what are you going to do? You're just gonna piss yourself off. You're gonna confirm what you thought and then piss yourself off. So just my suggestion.
No,
what do you think about the emotes in game?
Oh, I love them. Yeah, I think
Dude,
the
it's so fun.
emotes are really cool. I'm always like an ego guy, so anything that has me, like,
Yeah,
I love that. I'm
spam it.
just
Come away.
spamming the doofus email. I'm just trying to figure out like when the right time though, because sometimes you
Right.
want to use it, but then you don't want to be a dick,
You
But
don't want
then
to. No, here's the thing. For me, people can use emotes on me all the time. I don't get tilted by that
yeah, yeah,
stuff, and it's a game. Emote me, emote away.
exactly,
That's what it's
yeah,
for. Yeah.
exactly. It's like there's a good time to use it, and then there's a good time to spam it, and then there's a time to I'll save it.
We had we
I'll
had
save
one
it
where
for
it
the
was like
win.
3 penny Chicos at the same time, like just not planned, and it was just I was just dying,
Yeah,
just laughing my butt off there. I'm drinking
chocolate
Huel.
Huel, nice.
Yeah, this segment sponsored by Huel. Yeah, I guess make me look good.